The gunshot that ended Penelope Oakes's life as she knew, it came not from a weapon but from the mouth of Douglas Hartwell, and it echoed through Downeyville, California with more devastation than any bullet could have caused. She had been standing in front of the general store on that bright September morning in 1875, her basket of flour and sugar balanced on her hip, when Douglas approached her with fury, twisting his handsome features into something ugly and unrecognizable. Just 3 days earlier, she had refused his proposal of marriage in the parlor of her father's modest house on the edge of town, and now the banker's son had come to collect his revenge in the currency of reputation. "You think you are too good for me." Douglas's voice carried across Main Street, stopping conversations and turning heads. "After you let me into your bed, after you gave yourself to me like a common whore, you dare refuse to marry me." Penelope felt the blood drain from her face, the basket slipping from nerveless fingers to crash onto the wooden boardwalk. The lie hung in the air between them, so monstrous and so perfectly crafted that she could not immediately find words to counter it. She had never been alone with Douglas Hartwell for more than a few supervised moments. She had never permitted him anything beyond a chaste kiss on her gloved hand. But the damage was done before she could draw breath to defend herself. "That is not true," she managed, her voice shaking with shock and rage. "You know that is a lie, Douglas Hartwell." "Is it?" He stepped closer, his expression twisted with vindictive satisfaction. "Everyone knows we were courting. Everyone saw us together. Do you really think they will believe you rejected me without cause? Or will they wonder what happened between us that made you unsuitable for marriage after all?" Mrs. Henderson gasped from the doorway of the Mercantile. Young Timothy Fletcher, barely 16, stared with wide eyes from across the street. And Martha Collins, the biggest gossip in Downeyville, had her hand pressed to her mouth, her eyes gleaming with the anticipation of spreading this scandal from one end of town to the other. Penelope wanted to scream, to strike Douglas across his lying face, but she knew with terrible clarity that any emotional reaction would only serve to confirm the story in people's minds. Instead, she lifted her chin, forced steel into her spine, and spoke clearly. "You are a liar and a coward, Douglas Hartwell. I refused your proposal because I could see the weakness in your character, and you have just proven me right." She turned and walked away with as much dignity as she could gather around herself like armor, leaving her spilled groceries on the boardwalk. Behind her, she heard Douglas's voice rise again. "Run away, Penelope. It does not change what happened between us." The walk back to her father's house felt like miles instead of the few hundred yards it actually was. Every person she passed seemed to look at her differently, and she could not tell if it was her imagination or if the poison had already begun to spread. Her father, William Oakes, was a carpenter and a good man, but he had no wealth or influence to shield her from the social consequences of such an accusation. Her mother had died 5 years ago, leaving Penelope without a woman's guidance to navigate this nightmare. By sunset, the damage was complete. Martha Collins had made her rounds efficiently. Penelope watched through the window as former friends crossed the street to avoid passing their house. The minister's wife, who had always greeted her warmly after Sunday services, now looked away as if Penelope had become invisible. Even old Mr. Peterson, who had known her since she was a child, would not meet her eyes when he delivered their lumber order. Her father came home from his workshop with shoulders slumped in defeat. "I went to see Judge Hartwell," he said quietly, referring to Douglas's father. "He said his son would not have made such accusations without cause. He suggested that if you agreed to marry Douglas after all, they might be willing to overlook your indiscretion and restore your reputation. Father, please tell me you do not believe him." Penelope felt tears burning behind her eyes for the first time that day. "Please tell me you know I would never do what he claims." William Oakes crossed the room and pulled his daughter into his arms. "I know my girl, Penny. I know the truth. But knowing the truth and making the town believe it are two different things. Douglas Hartwell has destroyed you over wounded pride, and I do not know how to fix this." That night, Penelope lay awake in her small bedroom, listening to the sounds of Downieville settling into darkness. The Yuba River rushed endlessly in the distance, its waters having carried gold seekers and fortune hunters for more than 2 decades, since the rush of 1849. The town had grown from a rough mining camp into a real community with families and schools and churches, but apparently civilization was only a thin veneer over something more primitive and cruel. She could marry Douglas, she supposed, accept his proposal, and let him win this terrible game. It would restore her reputation, satisfy the gossips, give her father peace. But the thought of binding herself to a man capable of such viciousness made her stomach turn. She would rather face social ruin than spend her life with someone who had proven he would destroy her rather than accept rejection. The next morning brought fresh humiliation. When Penelope went to her job at the schoolhouse, where she had been teaching the younger children for the past year, she found Superintendent Morrison waiting for her with an expression of pained regret. "Miss Oakes, I'm afraid I have to ask you to step down from your position," he said, unable to meet her eyes. "Parents have expressed concerns about having someone of questionable moral character instructing their children. You understand, I am sure." "I understand that you are all cowards," Penelope said quietly. "I understand that one man can tell a lie and destroy a woman's entire life, and no one will even ask for proof or evidence. I understand that perfectly, Mr. Morrison." She walked out of the schoolhouse for the last time, past the curious stares of her former students, and found herself wandering toward the edge of town where the buildings gave way to pine forest. She needed space to think, to breathe, to figure out what came next. Leaving Downieville seemed like the only option, but where would she go? She had no family elsewhere, no money for travel, no prospects in a world that would ask for references she could no longer provide. Lost in these dark thoughts, she did not notice the rider approaching until his horse's shadow fell across her path. She looked up, shading her eyes against the late morning sun, and saw a man she did not recognize sitting easy in the saddle of a dusty buckskin mare. He was perhaps 25 or 26, with dark hair that needed cutting and several days of beard growth shadowing his jaw. His clothes marked him as a working cowboy, trail-worn but clean, and his eyes were a startling pale blue in his sun-browned face. "Sorry to startle you, miss," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "I am looking for the Keller Ranch. Fellow back in town gave me directions, but I think I might have taken a wrong turn." Penelope blinked, pulled from her misery by this mundane request. "You are going the right direction. Keep following this road about 3 miles north. You will see the ranch gate on your left. They have a sign." "Much obliged." He started to ride on, then paused, looking back at her with an expression of concern. "Are you all right, miss? You look like you have had some trouble." "I am fine," she said automatically, then felt a bitter laugh escape. "Actually, I am not fine at all, but there is nothing anyone can do about it. Thank you for asking, though." The cowboy studied her for a moment, his blue eyes thoughtful. "I have found that when folks say nothing can be done, they usually mean nothing easy can be done. There is usually something, if you are willing to get creative about it." Despite everything, Penelope felt a small smile tug at her lips. "That is an optimistic philosophy." "I prefer to think of it as stubborn." He grinned, and it transformed his face from merely handsome to something warmer and more genuine. Samuel Kincaid, lately of Wyoming and points beyond. Most folks call me Sam. Penelope Oakes. She hesitated, wondering if even strangers had heard the gossip by now. Lately of nowhere and headed for the same. Something flickered in Sam's expression, a recognition that suggested he had perhaps heard something after all. But instead of condemnation or prurient curiosity, his face softened with what looked like sympathy. "Well, Miss Oakes, I hope your day improves from here. And if you ever need a witness to the fact that there are still a few decent people in the world, you know where to find me. I will be working at the Keller place." He rode away before she could respond, leaving Penelope staring after him in confusion. Something about the encounter had felt significant, though she could not have said why. Perhaps it was simply that Sam Kincaid had treated her with basic human courtesy, which had become a rare commodity in the last 24 hours. She walked home slowly, dreading the isolation that awaited her. Her father had left for a job in Goodyear's Bar, a small settlement a few miles away, and would not be back until evening. The house felt empty and cold despite the September warmth. Penelope tried to occupy herself with mending and cleaning, but her hands shook with suppressed emotion, and she finally gave up and sat at her mother's old piano, playing the saddest songs she knew until the tears finally came. The following days established a grim pattern. Penelope became a ghost in her own town, ignored by former friends and stared at by strangers. The isolation was suffocating. She ventured out only when necessary, usually early in the morning or at dusk when fewer people were about. Her father tried to shield her from the worst of it, but she could see the toll it took on him, the way his shoulders bowed under the weight of helpless anger. A week after the confrontation with Douglas, Penelope was in the Mercantile early one morning, trying to complete her shopping before the store became busy, when she heard voices outside. Poor William Oakes, having to show his face in town after what his daughter did. If I were him, I would send her away to spare myself the embarrassment. Douglas Hartwell is being very generous, I think, still offering to marry her despite her behavior. She should count herself lucky. Penelope's hands clenched around the handle of her basket. She forced herself to finish gathering her items and brought them to the counter, where Mr. Henderson rang up her purchases with obvious discomfort. As she was counting out coins, the door opened and Douglas himself walked in with two of his friends. "Well, well," Douglas said loudly, his voice carrying to every corner of the store. "Penelope Oakes, still pretending to be a respectable woman, I see." She ignored him, pushing her coins across the counter to Mr. Henderson. But Douglas moved to block her path to the door, his friends flanking him with ugly grins. "You could end this any time you want, Penelope," Douglas said, his voice dropping to something that might have sounded reasonable to anyone not watching the cruelty in his eyes. "Just admit what happened between us. Agree to marry me. We can put all this unpleasantness behind us. Let me pass, Douglas." Penelope kept her voice steady through force of will. "Why are you being so stubborn? Everyone already believes me." "You have lost your position, your reputation, your friends. What are you holding on to? The truth," Penelope said quietly. "And my self-respect. Now move." Douglas's expression darkened. "You stupid girl. Do you think anyone will ever want you now? Do you think you will find better than me? You will end up alone and desperate, and when you come crawling back, I might not be so forgiving." "Then I guess I will end up alone," Penelope said, and pushed past him, her heart hammering but her head high. She made it 3 steps outside before her shaking legs nearly gave out. She paused, one hand against the wall of the building, breathing hard and fighting back tears of frustration and rage. It was not fair. None of this was fair. And the injustice of it burned like acid in her chest. Miss Oakes." She looked up to find Sam Kincaid standing a few feet away, his expression concerned. He had clearly just ridden into town, his horse tied at the rail nearby. He must have witnessed her confrontation with Douglas, or at least the aftermath of it. "I am fine," she said automatically, the lie she had been telling everyone. "No, you are not," Sam said gently. "And you do not have to pretend with me." Something about his kindness, coming on the heels of Douglas's malice, broke through her carefully maintained control. Tears spilled over before she could stop them, and she turned away, humiliated to be crying in the middle of Main Street. She heard Sam's boots on the boardwalk, and then he was there beside her, not touching but close enough that she could feel the solid reality of his presence. "Come on," he said quietly. "Let me buy you a cup of coffee at least. You look like you could use a friendly ear." "You do not want to be seen with me," Penelope said through her tears. "It will damage your reputation. I am the town scandal." "I have heard about that," Sam acknowledged. "Heard a fellow named Douglas Hartwell has been telling tales about you. And you believe him." She had to know, had to brace for another rejection. "Not for a second," Sam said calmly. "I met Douglas Hartwell the other day when I came into town for supplies. He is the type of man who lies as easy as breathing, and he has mean eyes. I have known 100 men like him, and none of them were worth the powder to blow them up." Penelope stared at him, shock momentarily overriding her tears. "You do not believe him?" "No, madam." "And I told him as much when he was holding forth in the saloon last night, bragging about ruining you." "What did you say?" Sam's jaw tightened. "I told him that any man who would destroy a woman's reputation out of wounded pride was no man at all. I also told him that where I come from, folks do not take kindly to liars and bullies." He paused, then added, "He did not much care for that." "You should not have done that," Penelope whispered. The warmth was blooming in her chest at the thought of someone defending her. "You will make an enemy of him." "I've had worse enemies than Douglas Hartwell." Sam's expression was grim. "And I could not sit there and listen to him gloat about what he did to you. It was not right." They were drawing stairs now, standing together on the boardwalk. Penelope could see Martha Collins watching from across the street with avid interest. "People will talk if they see us together." "Let them talk." Sam's voice was firm. "I am not ashamed to be seen with you, Miss Oakes, and if anyone has a problem with it, they can take it up with me." It was such a simple statement, but it carried the weight of a promise. For the first time in a week, Penelope felt like she could breathe fully. She was not alone anymore. This stranger, this cowboy who owed her nothing, had decided to stand beside her against the tide of gossip and judgment. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "You do not know me. This is not your fight." Sam was quiet for a moment, his blue eyes searching her face. "My mother died when I was 12, he finally said. "Cholera took her fast, but before that, when I was about 8, something similar happened to her. A man in our town spread rumors about her because she refused to sell him our land after my father died. Said she was a woman of loose morals, implied she was entertaining men for money. It was all lies, but it nearly destroyed her. The only thing that saved her was that the local sheriff stood up in the middle of town one day and said, 'I know Mrs. Kincaid, and I know Tom Fletcher, and I know who I believe. Anyone who wants to repeat Fletcher's lies can explain themselves to me first.'" He paused, the memory clearly painful. "His words meant everything, Miss Oakes. They did not erase all the damage, but they gave my mother back her dignity. They reminded people that lies only have power if we let them." Penelope felt fresh tears welling, but these were different. "I am sorry about your mother. So am I. But I learned something from watching that sheriff stand up for her. Learned that sometimes the right thing to do is the simplest thing, just tell the truth and stand by it, even when everyone else is caught up in the lie." He met her eyes directly. So that is what I am doing. Douglas Hartwell is a liar, and I am not going to pretend otherwise just because it is convenient. Thank you, Penelope whispered. You have no idea what this means to me. I think I do. Sam's expression softened. Now about that coffee. Or if you would rather not deal with the stairs, I could walk you home instead. Whatever you need. Coffee sounds wonderful, Penelope heard herself say. She was so tired of hiding, of slinking around town like she had actually done something wrong. If Sam Kincaid was brave enough to stand with her publicly, she could be brave enough to hold her head up. They walked together to the small restaurant at the end of Main Street, and Penelope felt every eye in town tracking their progress. Let them look. Let them gossip. She had a friend now, an ally, and that simple fact changed everything. The restaurant owner, Mrs. Chen, an older Chinese woman who had lived in Downeyville since the gold rush days, served them coffee without comment, though her eyes were knowing and kind. She had experienced her own share of prejudice and exclusion, Penelope knew, and perhaps that gave her more sympathy than most. Tell me about Wyoming, Penelope said, wanting to think about anything other than her current situation. What brought you to California? Sam leaned back in his chair, cradling his coffee cup. Work, mostly. I have been cowboying since I was 14, moving around wherever I could find a job. Wyoming, Montana, Nevada. I heard Keller was looking for experienced hands and that this part of California is beautiful, so I headed west. Do you ever think about settling down, staying in one place? Sometimes, Sam admitted. It is a lonely life, always moving on, but it is also freedom, you know, no ties, no obligations, just you and the work and the country. He paused, studying her over the rim of his cup. Though I am starting to see the appeal of staying put, building something instead of just drifting. They talked for over an hour, and Penelope found herself relaxing in a way she had not managed since Douglas's accusations. Sam was easy to talk to, with a dry sense of humor and a way of listening that made her feel heard. He told her stories about his travels, about difficult cattle drives and harsh winters, about the vast open spaces of Wyoming where you could ride for days without seeing another soul. And she told him about her life in Downeyville, about teaching the children and her love of music and how much she missed her mother. Your father, Sam said eventually. He must be going through hell, watching what is happening to you and being unable to stop it. He is, Penelope admitted. He offered to move, to take me away from here and start over somewhere else. But he has his business here, his friends, his life. I cannot ask him to give all that up because of Douglas Hartwell's lies. What do you want to do? Sam asked. If you could wave a magic wand and fix everything, what would that look like? Penelope thought about it. I would want my reputation back, my job, my life. I would want Douglas to admit he lied and face consequences for what he did. But mostly, I just want people to believe me. I want the truth to matter more than gossip. Sam nodded slowly. Then that is what we will work toward. We, Penelope looked at him in surprise. If you will let me help, Sam said. I cannot fix everything, but I can make it clear that not everyone in this town believes Douglas's stories. I can be a character witness, someone who says publicly that you are a decent and honest person. Sometimes that is enough to make people reconsider their judgments. You would do that for me. Risk your own standing in the community. I do not care much about my standing in the community, Sam said with a slight smile. I am just a cowboy passing through, but you have to live here. You deserve better than what is happening to you. They walked back through town together after that, and Penelope noticed that Sam's presence seemed to mute some of the hostility. People still stared, but fewer of them whispered openly. The statement he was making by being at her side was clear. Penelope Oakes had someone who believed in her, someone willing to stand with her publicly, and that changed the dynamic somehow. When they reached her father's house, Sam tipped his hat. "May I call on you again, Miss Oakes?" "I would consider it an honor to count you as a friend." "I would like that very much," Penelope said. "And please call me Penelope." "Penelope," Sam repeated as if testing the name. "It suits you." After he left, Penelope went inside feeling lighter than she had in days. She had been so certain that she was completely alone in this fight, that everyone in Downeyville had already decided she was guilty. But Sam's faith in her, his simple, unwavering belief that she was telling the truth, had given her something precious: hope. Her father came home that evening and listened with cautious optimism as she told him about Sam Kincaid. "I am glad you have someone on your side," William said. "But be careful, Penny. Getting close to someone right now when your reputation is in tatters, it could complicate things." "He is just a friend, Father," Penelope said, though even as the words left her mouth, she wondered if they were entirely true. There had been something in the way Sam looked at her, something warm and interested that went beyond mere sympathy. And if she was honest with herself, she had felt an answering pull toward him, an attraction that was both exhilarating and terrifying given her current circumstances. Sam came to call the next afternoon, and the day after that, and the day after that. He timed his visits for when he knew Penelope's father would be home, maintaining strict propriety even as Douglas's accusations made a mockery of such conventions. They sat in the parlor with William present, and Sam talked about the ranch work, about the cattle they were preparing for winter, about the beautiful country in the hills above Downeyville. On the fourth visit, Sam brought his guitar and played for them, his fingers surprisingly nimble on the strings and his voice a pleasant baritone. Penelope accompanied him on the piano, and for a few hours the house was filled with music instead of sorrow. Her father smiled for the first time in weeks, and Penelope felt almost normal again, but the rest of the town had not forgotten or forgiven. When Penelope went to the market, she was still snubbed and avoided. The minister announced from the pulpit that Sunday that certain unnamed individuals needed to repent their sins and seek forgiveness, and everyone knew he meant her. Douglas continued to spread his poison, embellishing his story with new details designed to make Penelope seem even more depraved. "I heard he is telling people now that you pursued him, that you were desperate to trap him into marriage," Sam told her one evening, his voice tight with anger. "Each version of his story makes him the victim and you the villain." "Why is he doing this?" Penelope asked, though she knew the answer. "He got what he wanted. He destroyed me. Why keep going?" "Because he wants you broken completely," Sam said grimly. "He wants you to come crawling back and beg him to marry you. He wants to win." "Then he will be disappointed," Penelope said with more confidence than she felt. "I will never marry him. I would rather live as a social pariah for the rest of my life." Sam looked at her with something fierce and proud in his expression. "You are stronger than most people I have known, Penelope Oakes." 2 weeks after Douglas's initial accusations, Sam came to the house with news. "I had an interesting conversation today at the ranch," he said. "One of the other hands, fellow named Pete Morrison, he worked for Judge Hartwell last year doing odd jobs. He said Douglas has a history of this sort of thing." Penelope leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "Pete said there was a woman in Sacramento, a merchant's daughter that Douglas was pursuing before he moved back to Downeyville. When she rejected him, he started spreading rumors about her too. Her family had enough money to fight back, threatened legal action, and Douglas backed down. But Pete remembered the incident clearly." "Would Pete be willing to testify to that?" Penelope's father asked. "If we could show a pattern of behavior, prove Douglas has done this before." "I asked him," Sam said. "He is hesitant." Judge Hartwell is a powerful man and Pete needs his job, but he said he would think about it. It was not much, but it was something. A thread of hope that maybe, possibly, Douglas's lies could be exposed. Penelope clung to it like a lifeline. Sam started coming to town with her when she needed to run errands, his presence a silent statement that she was not alone. And gradually, very gradually, things began to shift. Not with everyone, not even with most people, but with a few. Mrs. Chen at the restaurant always greeted Penelope warmly now. Old Mr. Garcia, who ran the livery stable, tipped his hat when he saw her. And one morning, Clara Henderson, who had been Penelope's closest friend before the scandal, approached her hesitantly on the street. "Penelope, I have been thinking," Clara said, her eyes downcast, "about everything that happened. And I know you. I have known you since we were children. And the more I think about it, the more I realize that Douglas's story does not match the person you are." Penelope felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you, Clara. You have no idea how much it means to hear you say that." "I am sorry I did not say it sooner," Clara whispered. "I was afraid of what people would think, afraid of being associated with the scandal. But Sam Kincaid is not afraid, and he barely knows you. I have known you my whole life, and I should have been braver." They embraced there on the street, and Penelope felt another piece of her heart heal. It was not full vindication, but it was progress. Clara could not undo all the damage, but her friendship mattered. That evening, Sam took Penelope for a walk along the Yuba River, carefully maintaining a public distance, but finding privacy in the stretch of riverbank away from town. The September weather was turning cooler, and the aspens on the hillsides were beginning to show hints of gold. "You are getting your life back," Sam observed. "Slowly, but it is happening." "Because of you," Penelope said. "If you had not stood up for me, I do not think anyone else would have found the courage to question Douglas's story." Sam shook his head. "You are giving me too much credit." "You stood up for yourself first, Penelope. You refused to marry him even when it would have been easier. You refused to let him break you. That is what people are seeing now, that strength." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, the river rushing beside them and the late afternoon sun slanting through the pines. Penelope was intensely aware of Sam's presence, of the way his shoulder almost brushed hers, of the warmth in his eyes when he looked at her. "Can I ask you something personal?" Sam said eventually. "Of course. Why did you refuse Douglas in the first place? Before all this happened, was there a specific reason or just a general sense that he was not right for you?" Penelope considered the question carefully. "He frightened me," she admitted. "Not in an obvious way, but there was something beneath the surface, something cold and controlling. When he proposed, he talked about how his wife would behave, how she would dress, who she would associate with. He laid out rules like he was hiring a servant, not asking a partner to share his life. And when I tried to object, to say that I might have my own ideas about how to live, he got this look on his face. Just for a moment his mask slipped, and I saw rage underneath. That was when I knew I could never marry him." "You have good instincts," Sam said quietly. "A lot of people would have ignored that warning and married him anyway, especially given his family's position in town." "I suppose I should be grateful for my instincts now," Penelope said with a bitter laugh. "Though at the time, I thought refusing him was the safe choice. I never imagined he would retaliate like this." Sam stopped walking and turned to face her. The setting sun lit his face, highlighting the strong lines of his jaw and the serious expression in his blue eyes. "Penelope, I need to tell you something, and I hope it does not complicate things further. But I have never been good at hiding what I feel, and it seems dishonest not to say it." Penelope's heart began to beat faster. "What is it?" "I am falling in love with you," Sam said simply. "I know the timing is terrible. I know you are dealing with enough already without adding this to the mix, but I wanted you to know. I did not befriend you just to help you through this crisis. I befriend you because I admire you, because I enjoy your company, because I think you are one of the finest people I have ever met. And somewhere along the way, admiration became something deeper. Penelope stared at him, shock and joy and fear all tangling together in her chest. Sam, I do not know what to say. You do not have to say anything, he assured her. I am not asking for a response or a commitment. I just wanted you to know where I stand. My feelings do not come with conditions or expectations. I will keep helping you regardless of how you feel about me. That is not fair, Penelope said, her voice shaking. You cannot say something like that and then tell me I do not have to respond. Why not? Because I do have a response. She took a deep breath, gathering her courage. I am falling in love with you too, Sam Kincaid. And it terrifies me because my judgment in men has been so catastrophically wrong already. Douglas seemed charming and appropriate at first, and look how that turned out. What if I am making another mistake? Sam reached out slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away, and took her hand in his. His palm was calloused and warm, his grip gentle but firm. You are not making a mistake, he said. But I understand why you would be afraid. So how about this? We take things slow. No rush, no pressure. We get to know each other properly, and you can decide over time if this is real and right. I am not going anywhere. You said you were just passing through, that you never stay in one place long, Penelope reminded him. I changed my mind, Sam said with a slight smile. I found a reason to stay. They stood there by the river as the sun set, hands clasped, and Penelope felt something shift inside her. For weeks, she had been focused on survival, on just getting through each day. But now, with Sam's declaration still echoing in her ears, she could see a future beyond the scandal. She could imagine happiness again, possibility, hope. We should get back before dark, Sam said reluctantly. I do not want to give anyone more ammunition to use against you. They walked back to town slowly, and when they reached Penelope's house, Sam pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead before saying good night. It was chaste and respectful, but it left Penelope's skin tingling and her heart racing. Her father took one look at her face when she came inside and smiled knowingly. That cowboy is good for you, Penny. He is, Penelope agreed. Father, is it crazy to be thinking about love and courtship when my life is still in shambles? Not crazy at all, William said. Seems to me that finding someone who loves you in your worst moments is a blessing, not a curse. Sam Kincaid sees you at your lowest and still wants to be here. That tells you something important about his character. The next few weeks brought more gradual improvements. Pete Morrison finally agreed to speak publicly about Douglas's previous behavior in Sacramento. And though Judge Hartwell tried to discredit him, enough people heard the story to start questioning the narrative. Clara Henderson began defending Penelope to mutual friends. And slowly, very slowly, a few more people started to reconsider their judgments. But Douglas, sensing that his control over the situation was slipping, became more aggressive. He started confronting Penelope whenever he saw her in town, his accusations becoming more explicit and vile. And he began targeting Sam as well, spreading rumors that the cowboy was taking advantage of Penelope's damaged reputation, that he had dishonorable intentions. It came to a head one Saturday afternoon in late October. Penelope and Sam were walking through town together when Douglas stepped out of the saloon with several of his friends, all of them clearly drunk despite the early hour. There she is, Douglas announced loudly. The whore of Downeyville, walking around like she has not shamed her family and her town. And there is her latest conquest, the cowboy who thinks he can play hero. Sam's expression went cold and hard. "Walk away, Hartwell. You are drunk and stupid, and I do not want to do something we will both regret." "You threatening me, Cowboy?" Douglas sneered. "You think you can come into my town and tell me what to do?" "I think you are a liar and a coward," Sam said calmly. "And I think everyone here knows it by now." "Your stories keep changing, Hartwell. You have added so many details to your original lie that it is collapsing under its own weight. The truth has a way of being simple and consistent. Lies require constant maintenance." Douglas's face flushed with rage. "You calling me a liar?" "I am calling you a liar," Sam confirmed. "And I am calling you a bully and a small, petty man who cannot handle rejection. Penelope Oakes refused to marry you because she is too good for you, and you tried to destroy her for it. But it did not work. She is still standing, still strong, and every day more people see through your lies. You son of—" Douglas lunged forward, fist raised, but Sam sidestepped easily and caught his arm, using Douglas's own momentum to send him stumbling. "Do not," Sam said quietly. "I have been patient because I do not want to make things worse for Penelope. But if you come at me again, I will defend myself, and you will not like the outcome." Several townspeople had gathered to watch the confrontation. Among them, Penelope noticed, were Mr. Garcia from the livery, Mrs. Chen from the restaurant, Clara Henderson, and even a few members of the town council. They were seeing Douglas at his worst, drunk and aggressive and vindictive, and they were seeing Sam's calm, measured response. Judge Hartwell himself appeared from his office across the street, his expression thunderous. "What is going on here?" "Your son just tried to assault me," Sam said evenly, "after insulting Miss Oakes again." Judge Hartwell looked between Sam, his son, and the assembled crowd. Penelope could see the calculation in his eyes. He was a political man, conscious of public opinion, and the mood of the onlookers was clearly shifting against Douglas. "Douglas, go home," the judge said curtly. "Sleep off whatever you have been drinking." "But father, now," Judge Hartwell snapped. He turned to Sam with a look that could have frozen water. "And you, Kincaid, I suggest you remember that you are new in this town and think carefully about making enemies." "I do not make enemies, Judge Hartwell," Sam said quietly. "I just do not tolerate bullies. There is a difference." The judge's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more, just turned and walked away. Douglas followed after a moment, shooting venomous looks back at Sam and Penelope. After the crowd dispersed, Clara came over with tears in her eyes. "Penelope, I am so sorry. I should have defended you like Sam just did. I should have stood up to Douglas weeks ago." "You are standing up now," Penelope said, squeezing her friend's hand. "That matters." That evening, sitting with Sam and her father in the parlor, Penelope felt the first real stirrings of vindication. "Do you think this is over?" she asked. "Will Douglas finally leave me alone?" "I think he has been publicly humiliated," Sam said thoughtfully. "Which might make him back off or might make him more dangerous. We need to be careful." His words proved prophetic. 2 days later, Penelope was walking home from the market alone when a carriage pulled up beside her. Judge Hartwell leaned out the window, his expression unreadable. "Miss Oakes, might I have a word?" Penelope's first instinct was to refuse, but curiosity won out. She approached the carriage cautiously. "What do you want, Judge?" "I want to offer you an apology," he said, and the words were so unexpected that Penelope almost laughed. "I have been watching this situation unfold, and I have come to realize that my son has been dishonest about the nature of your relationship." Penelope stared at him. "You believe me?" "I believe that Douglas has behaved shamefully," Judge Hartwell said carefully. "And I believe that you have been treated unfairly as a result. I cannot undo the damage that has been done, but I can offer some recompense. I understand you lost your teaching position." I have spoken with Superintendent Morrison, and he is willing to reinstate you if you desire it." It was everything Penelope had hoped for, but the victory felt hollow. "Did you threaten him? Tell him to give me my job back." "I merely pointed out that the school board had acted on rumors rather than facts," Judge Hartwell said, "and that such rash action might open them to criticism or even legal action. The superintendent saw the wisdom in correcting the error. And Douglas, will he admit he lied?" Judge Hartwell's expression hardened. "My son is leaving Downeyville. I am sending him to San Francisco to work for a business associate. He will not be returning." "So he faces no real consequences," Penelope said bitterly. "He destroys my life, and his punishment is to be sent away to a new city with new opportunities." "He faces the consequence of his father's disappointment and disapproval," Judge Hartwell said stiffly, "and he will not be welcome back in this town as long as I have any say in the matter." It was not enough, not nearly enough, but it was something. Penelope wanted to reject the offer out of pride, to tell Judge Hartwell that his belated acknowledgement of his son's crimes was too little too late. But she thought of her father, of the strain this scandal had put on him. She thought of her love for teaching, for working with the children. And she thought of Sam's words by the river, "Sometimes the right thing is the simplest thing." "I will return to teaching," she said quietly. "Thank you for making that possible, but Judge Hartwell, I want you to know that what your son did nearly destroyed me. An apology and a job do not erase that." "I know," the judge said, and for a moment he looked old and tired. "For what it is worth, Miss Oakes, I am truly sorry. I raised him to be better than this." The carriage rolled away, leaving Penelope standing in the street with emotions too tangled to name. She was relieved, angry, vindicated, and hollow all at once. When she told Sam the news that evening, he pulled her into his arms, and she finally let herself cry, great shaking sobs that she had been holding back for weeks. "It is over," Sam murmured against her hair. "You won, Penelope. You stood your ground and you won." But winning felt more complicated than she had imagined. Yes, she had her job back. Yes, Douglas was leaving town, but the rumors would linger. Some people would always believe the worst about her. And the emotional toll of the last weeks would take a long time to heal. "I do not feel like I won," she admitted. "I feel tired and bruised and angry." "That is fair," Sam said. "You have been through hell. Give yourself time to feel everything you need to feel." Over the next few weeks, Penelope slowly reclaimed her life. She returned to teaching, and the children welcomed her back with hugs and homemade cards. Most of the parents seemed relieved to have her back, though a few still kept their distance. Clara and a few other friends began including her in social activities again. The whispers followed her less often, and when they did, they came from a shrinking minority, and through it all, Sam was there. He continued courting her with old-fashioned propriety, always asking permission before visits, always maintaining appropriate distance in public. But in private moments, sitting together by the river or on her father's porch, he let her see his heart. He talked about his dreams of someday owning his own ranch, a small place where he could raise horses and build something permanent. He asked about her dreams too, and listened with genuine interest as she described wanting to write music, to compose songs that other people might sing. "I think you could do that," Sam said. "I think you could do anything you set your mind to, Penelope Oakes." Winter came to Downeyville with snow and cold, and the town turned inward, hunkering down against the Sierra weather. Sam moved from the bunkhouse at the Keller Ranch into a small room above the livery, closer to town and to Penelope. They spent long evenings by the fire in her father's house, playing music and talking and slowly, carefully falling more deeply in love. On Christmas Eve, Sam asked William Oakes for permission to marry his daughter. "I know my circumstances are not ideal," Sam said. "I am just a working cowboy with very little money saved, but I love Penelope more than I have ever loved anyone or anything. And I will spend the rest of my life making her happy, if she will have me." William clasped Sam's hand, his eyes suspiciously bright. "You stood by my daughter when the whole town had turned against her. You gave her back her dignity and her hope. As far as I am concerned, you are exactly who she deserves." Sam proposed to Penelope on Christmas morning, presenting her with a simple gold band that had belonged to his mother. "It is not much," he said apologetically, "but it is all I have of her, and I would be honored if you would wear it." "It is perfect," Penelope whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, Sam. Yes, I will marry you." They were married in March of 1876, with spring flowers blooming in the valleys and the snow melting from the high peaks. The wedding was small, just close friends and family, but it was joyful and real. Clara stood up as Penelope's maid of honor, and Pete Morrison served as Sam's best man. Even Mrs. Chen closed her restaurant for the afternoon to attend the ceremony. As Penelope walked down the aisle of the small church on her father's arm, she saw Sam waiting for her at the altar, his blue eyes bright with love and promise. She thought about everything they had been through to reach this moment, all the pain and struggle and slow victory. And she thought about what Sam had told her that first day, when she had been certain nothing could be done to fix her ruined reputation. There is always something, if you are willing to get creative about it. The minister, the same one who had condemned her from the pulpit months earlier, seemed uncomfortable as he performed the ceremony. But when he asked if anyone objected to the union, the church remained silent. No one objected. No one had the right to any more. Penelope's reputation had been restored not through some dramatic revelation or confession, but through the simple, stubborn insistence of good people that she was worth believing in. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister said. "You may kiss your bride." Sam cupped her face in his hands and kissed her with a tenderness that made Penelope's heart overflow. When they pulled apart, he whispered against her lips, "I love you, Mrs. Kincaid." "I love you too," she whispered back. The reception was held at the restaurant with Mrs. Chen providing food and Clara organizing decorations. People came who had snubbed Penelope months ago, offering congratulations and well wishes that felt both genuine and awkward. Penelope accepted their good wishes with grace, though part of her would never forget who had stood by her and who had waited to see which way the wind would blow. Late in the evening, as the party was winding down, Sam took Penelope's hand and led her outside. The March air was cool and crisp, and above them the stars blazed in a sky unmarred by city lights. "Are you happy?" Sam asked, pulling her close. "I am," Penelope said, and realized it was true. "I am angry about what Douglas did. I am sad about the friends who abandoned me. But right now, in this moment with you, I am happy." "Good," Sam said, "because I have something to tell you. I have been saving every penny I could for the last 6 months, and I talked to a man who owns some land up in the hills. Nothing fancy, just 60 acres with a creek running through it. But it could be ours, Penelope. We could build a house, start a ranch, make a real home." "Sam, that is wonderful." Penelope threw her arms around his neck. "When can we see it?" "Tomorrow, if you want. We could ride up there for our honeymoon, camp out under the stars, and you can tell me if you think it is the right place." They did exactly that. The day after their wedding, they rode out of Downieville with bedrolls and supplies, heading up into the high country. The land Sam had found was beautiful. A small valley sheltered by pines with a clear creek running through it and mountain views in every direction. They spent 3 days there. sleeping under the stars and talking about their future, about the house they would build and the horses they would raise and the life they would create together. On the second night, lying in Sam's arms with the campfire crackling nearby, Penelope said, "I never thanked you properly for what you did for me, for standing up to Douglas, for believing in me when no one else would." "You do not need to thank me," Sam said. "I did not do it expecting gratitude. I did it because it was right, and because I could not stand by and watch you be destroyed." "But you did more than just defend me," Penelope insisted. "You showed me that I was not alone, that someone saw me and valued me even when the rest of the world had decided I was worthless. You gave me back myself, Sam. That is a gift I can never repay." "Then do not try to repay it," Sam said, kissing her forehead. "Just be happy. That is all I want." They returned to Downieville and began the work of building their life. Sam continued working at the Keller Ranch while saving money for their land, and Penelope kept teaching. They lived with her father for the first few months of their marriage, and William seemed happier than he had been in years, delighted to have a son-in-law he respected and a daughter who glowed with contentment. In June, they broke ground on their house. Sam did much of the work himself, with help from Pete Morrison and a few other friends. William contributed his carpentry skills, and Penelope spent her evenings after school painting and planning the interior. It was hard work, exhausting and sometimes frustrating, but there was joy in it too. They were building something that was entirely theirs, a home that no one could take away or taint with rumors. The house was finished by late September, a simple 2-room cabin with a sleeping loft and a wide porch that faced the mountains. It was not grand, but it was solid and beautiful, and when Penelope stood on the porch for the first time, looking out at their land and their future, she felt a peace she had not known was possible. They moved in on a bright October morning, carrying their few possessions up from Downieville in a borrowed wagon. That night, they lay in their own bed in their own house for the first time, listening to the wind in the pines and the distant call of an owl. "Are you happy?" Sam asked, echoing his question from their wedding night. "I am so happy I could burst," Penelope said. "Sometimes I have to remind myself that this is real, that I actually get to have this life with you." "It is real," Sam assured her, pulling her closer, "and it is only going to get better." He was right. Over the next year, their ranch slowly took shape. Sam bought their first horses, a breeding pair of sturdy quarter horses that he hoped would be the foundation of a larger herd. Penelope planted a garden and fruit trees, and started composing music again, filling the cabin with melodies that drifted out into the valley. They made friends with their neighbors, scattered throughout the hills, and became part of the wider community of ranchers and farmers trying to make a life in the Sierra foothills. Penelope continued teaching, riding down to Downieville 3 days a week during the school year. The scandal that had nearly destroyed her had faded into history, mentioned only rarely and then, usually, as an example of how wrong people could be when they rushed to judgment. Douglas Hartwell never returned to Downieville. Rumor had it he was in San Francisco, working in banking and causing trouble in a new city. Penelope did not care. He was part of her past, and she was focused on her future. In the spring of 1877, Penelope discovered she was pregnant. Sam was overjoyed, already planning to build an addition to the house and talking about teaching their child to ride. Penelope was terrified and excited in equal measure, still adjusting to the idea that she was going to be a mother. "What if I am not good at this?" she asked Sam one evening. "What if I do everything wrong?" "You are not going to do everything wrong," Sam said, resting his hand on her still flat stomach. "You are going to be a wonderful mother, and I am going to be right here with you, figuring it out together." Their son was born in November, a healthy baby with dark hair and his father's blue eyes. They named him Thomas, after Sam's father, and Penelope fell in love with him the moment she held him in her arms. Sam was a devoted father, getting up in the night to help with feedings and rocking Thomas to sleep while humming off key lullabies. William Oakes moved out to the ranch permanently after Thomas was born, unable to bear being separated from his grandson. He built himself a small cabin near the main house and spent his days doting on the baby and helping Sam with ranch work. Watching her father with her son, Penelope felt the last lingering shadows of the scandal finally lift. She had not just survived what Douglas tried to do to her, she had transcended it. She had built a life so full of love and purpose that the past truly did not matter anymore. 2 years later, they had a daughter, Catherine, a tiny girl with Penelope's dark eyes and a voice that could shatter glass when she was displeased. Thomas, now 2, was fascinated by his baby sister and insisted on helping with everything, from diaper changes to feedings. The house was loud and chaotic and absolutely perfect. Sam's horse breeding business was beginning to take off. His animals were known for their intelligence and stamina, and ranchers from all over the region came to buy from him. The money was still tight, but they were making a real living from the ranch, enough to support their growing family and even save a little. Penelope had stopped teaching to focus on the children, but she had not stopped creating. She composed music in the evenings, and some of her songs had even been performed at local gatherings. Clara, who visited regularly with her own family, encouraged Penelope to submit some pieces to publishers in San Francisco. Penelope was considering it, though the idea of her music being performed by strangers was both thrilling and terrifying. On their 5th wedding anniversary in March of 1881, Sam took Penelope back to the spot where he had proposed. They left the children with William for the afternoon and rode up into the hills, retracing the path of their honeymoon. "You remember what I said to you that first day we met?" Sam asked as they stood looking out over the valley. "When you told me nothing could be done about Douglas's lies. You said that when people say nothing can be done, they usually mean nothing easy can be done," Penelope recalled. "You said there is usually something if you are willing to get creative." "You proved that right," Sam said. "You did not take the easy path. You did not give up or give in. You fought for your truth and your dignity, and you won." "We won," Penelope corrected. "I could not have done any of it without you, Sam. You were the one who believed in me first. You were the one who stood up and said Douglas's words meant nothing." "His words meant nothing here," Sam said, touching his hand to her heart. "Because you knew who you were. I just helped other people see it too." They kissed there on the hillside, with the wind in the pines and the whole valley spread out below them. And Penelope thought about everything that had brought them to this moment. The scandal and the struggle, the slow victory and the hard-won happiness. She thought about Douglas Hartwell and his vicious lies, and realized with surprise that she felt something close to pity for him. He had tried to destroy her out of wounded pride, and in doing so, he had pushed her toward the greatest happiness of her life. His cruelty had inadvertently been the catalyst for her meeting Sam, for building this ranch, for creating this family. "What are you thinking about?" Sam asked, reading the expression on her face. "I am thinking that sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead to the best things," Penelope said. "I would not wish what Douglas did to me on anyone, but if it had not happened, I might never have met you. I might have married someone safe and suitable and spent my whole life wondering if there was something more." "So you are saying I should thank Douglas Hartwell?" Sam asked with a grin. "Absolutely not," Penelope laughed. "But I am saying that we do not have to let what he did define us. We can acknowledge that it happened, that it was terrible and wrong, and still choose to focus on what we built from the ashes. They rode back to the ranch as the sun was setting, and found their children waiting for them on the porch with William. Thomas ran to meet them, shouting about the bird's nest he had found, while Catherine toddled after him on unsteady legs. Sam swept both children up, one in each arm, and Penelope's heart swelled with love for her chaotic, beautiful family. That night, after the children were asleep and William had retired to his cabin, Penelope and Sam sat on their porch watching the stars. The night was clear and cool, and the sounds of the ranch settling for sleep surrounded them. Horses nickering in the barn, the wind in the trees, the distant call of a coyote. "Tell me about our future," Penelope said, leaning against Sam's shoulder. "What do you see when you look ahead?" "I see more children, if you are willing," Sam said. "I see this ranch growing, becoming something we can pass down to Thomas and Catherine and whoever comes after. I see you publishing your music and becoming famous, though I will be insufferably smug about having believed in you from the start." He paused, pressing a kiss to her temple. "But mostly I just see us, Penelope, growing old together, building this life day by day, being happy." "That sounds perfect," Penelope whispered, and it was. They had 3 more children over the next years. Another son, William, named for Penelope's father, and twin girls, Sarah and Mary, who arrived during a snowstorm in 1885 and kept everyone on their toes from their first breath. The ranch expanded, adding more land and more horses. Penelope's music was published and performed, bringing in additional income and a certain amount of local fame. Sam became known throughout the region as one of the best horsemen in California, and people traveled from distant states to buy his animals. William Oakes lived to be 75, long enough to see all 5 of his grandchildren grow into strong, confident young people. He died peacefully in his sleep in 1892, and they buried him on the hillside overlooking the ranch, in the place he had loved. Thomas grew up to be a skilled rancher like his father, eventually taking over much of the daily operations of the business. Catherine became a teacher like her mother, opening a small school in the valley that served the scattered ranching families. William Jr. became a veterinarian, studying in San Francisco before returning to the ranch to care for the animals. And the twins, Sarah and Mary, were inseparable adventurers who spent their childhoods exploring every inch of the mountains and eventually became accomplished horse trainers in their own right. Through it all, Sam and Penelope remained devoted to each other. They had their disagreements, of course, their moments of frustration and stress, as any couple does. But the foundation they had built during those difficult early days in Downeyville proved unshakable. They had chosen each other in the hardest possible circumstances, and that choice had bound them together in ways that easy courtship could never have achieved. On their 25th wedding anniversary in 1901, their children organized a celebration at the ranch, inviting friends and family from all over the region. Clara came with her husband and 4 children, and they spent hours reminiscing about the old days in Downeyville, about the scandal that had nearly destroyed Penelope and the cowboy who had refused to believe the lies. "You ever think about Douglas Hartwell?" Clara asked during a quiet moment. "Wonder what became of him?" "Not often," Penelope admitted. "I heard he died a few years ago in San Francisco. Apparently he had made quite a name for himself in banking but never married. I suppose I feel sorry for him in a way. He spent so much energy on cruelty and vindictiveness, and what did it get him? He is gone and mostly forgotten, while I have this beautiful life filled with people I love." "His words meant nothing," Clara said softly, echoing the phrase that had become almost legendary in their community. "His words meant nothing," Penelope agreed. That evening, as the celebration wound down and their guests departed, Sam found Penelope standing on the porch watching the sunset. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Happy anniversary, Mrs. Kincaid." "Happy anniversary, Mr. Kincaid." Penelope turned in his arms to face him. At 51 and 54 respectively, they both showed the marks of time and hard work, but Sam's blue eyes were as warm as ever, and Penelope's smile still made his heart race. "You have any regrets?" Sam asked. "Anything you would change if you could go back?" Penelope thought about it seriously. "I regret that Douglas hurt me. I regret the pain it caused my father and the friends I lost. But I do not regret how it turned out. I do not regret meeting you, marrying you, building this life. So no, I would not change anything." "Would you?" "Not a single thing," Sam said firmly. "You are the best decision I ever made, Penelope Oakes Kincaid." They stood together as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold and purple. Behind them, they could hear their children and grandchildren laughing, the sound of family and continuity and love. This was their legacy, Penelope thought. Not the scandal that had almost destroyed her, not the lies that had tried to define her, but this ranch and this family and this love that had endured for 25 years. "Tell me again," Penelope said, something she asked Sam periodically even after all these years. "Tell me what you said to Douglas that day in town when he was spreading his poison." Sam smiled, understanding the ritual, understanding why she still needed to hear it sometimes. "I told him his words meant nothing. I told him that truth matters more than gossip, and that you were worth 100 of him. I told him that where you were concerned, his opinion carried no weight." "His words mean nothing here," Penelope whispered, touching her heart just as Sam had done all those years ago on their 5th anniversary. "Not then, not now, not ever." As full darkness fell, they went inside to join their family. The house that Sam had built with his own hands was now filled with multiple generations, with children and grandchildren and the promise of great-grandchildren to come. It was noisy and chaotic and absolutely perfect. Sam and Penelope would live many more years together, well into the new century. They would see automobiles replace horses on the roads, though never on their ranch. They would see California grow and change, becoming more connected and modern while the mountains remained timeless. They would see their children have children of their own, expanding the family in directions they could never have imagined. But they would always remember those difficult days in 1875, when a rejected suitor tried to destroy a young woman's life, and a cowboy said his words meant nothing. They would remember because those days had forged them, had tested them and proven them strong enough to withstand anything the world could throw at them. And they would remember because their story became something more than just their own. It became a lesson for their children and grandchildren about standing up for the truth, about believing in people even when it was unpopular, about choosing love over convenience and courage over comfort. The scandal that Douglas Hartwell created had been meant to be Penelope's legacy, the thing that defined her life. Instead, it became a footnote, a brief chapter in a much longer and happier story. In 1915, at the age of 65, Penelope published a collection of her musical compositions. In the dedication, she wrote simply, "For Sam, who believed in me first and taught me that the truth is more powerful than any lie. His faith gave me the strength to become myself." Sam, reading it for the first time with tears in his eyes, pulled his wife close and said, "I just saw what was already there, Penelope. The strength was always yours. But you helped me find it," she insisted. "You showed me that I was worth fighting for." They were in their 70s when the Great War came. touching even their remote corner of California as young men from the valley went off to fight. Their grandsons volunteered, brave and idealistic, and Sam and Penelope prayed for their safe return. Most of them came back, changed by what they had seen but alive, and the ranch became a refuge for them as they readjusted to peacetime. In 1920, Sam fell from a horse while trying to break a particularly stubborn yearling. At 73, he was still doing work that younger men might have hesitated to attempt. He broke his leg badly, and while it healed slowly and left him with a permanent limp. Penelope nursed him through it with patience and humor, and Sam joked that it took a horse to finally slow him down. "You should be taking it easier anyway," Penelope scolded, though her eyes were gentle. "You are not 25 anymore, Sam Kincaid. Are you calling me old, Mrs. Kincaid?" "I am calling you reckless and stubborn and entirely too proud to ask for help," Penelope retorted. "Which you have always been, so I suppose age has nothing to do with it." They celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary in 1926, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. The ranch had been in the family for 50 years, a testament to the life they had built together. Sam was 79, Penelope 76, and both of them still sharp and engaged with the world around them. At the celebration, their eldest grandson, Thomas Jr., gave a speech about his grandparents and their love story. He talked about the scandal in Downeyville, about how his grandfather had stood up for his grandmother when no one else would, about how their refusal to let lies define them had become an inspiration to the entire family. "My grandfather taught me that the measure of a man is not in his words, but in his actions," Thomas Jr. said. "He showed me that standing up for what is right is more important than being popular or comfortable. And my grandmother taught me that the truth is worth fighting for, even when the whole world seems arrayed against you." Together, they built something that will last long after they are gone. A family, a legacy, and a love that nothing could shake. Sam and Penelope, sitting together with their hands clasped, smiled through their tears. This was what mattered, they thought. Not the scandal that had nearly destroyed them, but the life they had created in spite of it. Not the cruelty of Douglas Hartwell, but the kindness they had shown each other every day for 50 years. Sam died peacefully in his sleep in 1928, at the age of 81. He went to bed one night after a normal day, kissed his wife goodnight, and simply did not wake up. Penelope found him in the morning, still looking peaceful and younger than his years, and she sat beside him for a long time, holding his hand and talking to him as if he could still hear her. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for every day of the last 53 years. I will miss you every moment for the rest of my life, but I will be grateful too. Grateful that I got to love you and be loved by you." They buried Sam next to her father on the hillside overlooking the ranch, with all 5 of his children and dozens of grandchildren and great-grandchildren gathered to say goodbye. The marker they placed was simple. Samuel Kincaid, 1847–1928, beloved husband, father, grandfather. He saw the truth and spoke it. Penelope lived 2 more years without Sam, surrounded by family but profoundly lonely for the man who had been her partner for more than half a century. She spent her time writing letters to her scattered descendants, passing along wisdom and stories, making sure the history of their family was preserved. And she composed one final piece of music, a love song so beautiful and heartbreaking that everyone who heard it wept. She died in the spring of 1930 at the age of 80 and was buried beside Sam as she had requested. Her marker read, Penelope Oakes Kincaid, 1850–1930. Beloved wife, mother, grandmother, her truth set her free. The ranch stayed in the family, passing down through the generations. And the story of Sam and Penelope became a family legend, told and retold to children and grandchildren, a reminder of what love and courage and truth can accomplish. Douglas Hartwell, the man who had tried to destroy Penelope with his lies, was largely forgotten, mentioned only as a cautionary tale about the consequences of cruelty. But Sam and Penelope lived on, not just in memory but in the lives they had touched, the family they had created, the love they had embodied. Their story proved that sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead to the best outcomes, that courage in the face of injustice matters, and that love, real love built on respect and trust and shared values, can overcome anything. In Downeyville, a plaque was eventually placed in the town square commemorating their story. It read, "In memory of Penelope and Samuel Kincaid, who showed us that truth and love are more powerful than malice and lies. Her reputation was ruined by a rejected suitor." The cowboy said his words mean nothing here, and he was right.